You lose arguments you're right about. You get ignored in rooms where you have the best idea. You watch less intelligent people lead, convince, and win. That's not bad luck. That's a skill gap, and it's fixable. Okay, listen. I need to tell you about a group of people that basically figured out how the human brain works 2,500 years ago. You know how some people just win arguments? Not because they're right, not because they're smarter, but because something about how they talk makes you just agree? And you walk away going, wait, how did that happen? That's not an accident. That's a skill, a very old skill. The ancient Greeks had a name for the people who taught it. They called them sophists, and the establishment hated them. Because for a fee, they would teach anyone how to do what the powerful had always done naturally. Persuade, dominate, win, without ever needing to be right. This video is about their method, and why it still works today, maybe better than ever. Here's what most people get wrong about the sophists. They think it was about lying, about tricks, about making people believe things that aren't true. It wasn't. It was more dangerous than that. The sophists, men like Protagoras, Gorgias, Thrasymachus, they weren't liars, they were observers. They sat and watched how human beings actually made decisions. Not how philosophers said they made decisions, how they actually did. And what they found was uncomfortable. We don't decide with logic, we decide with feeling, and then we build the logic afterward to justify what we already wanted to believe. Protagoras put it cleanly. He said, and this is a real quote, not something invented for a motivational poster, "Man is the measure of all things." What he meant, there is no single fixed truth that sits outside of human perception. Truth is what a community of humans agrees to call true. That sounds abstract. Let me make it concrete. Think about the last time someone changed your mind, really changed it, on something you felt strongly about. I'm willing to bet it wasn't because of a statistic, it wasn't because of a chart, it was because of a story you heard, or a person you trusted, or a moment where you felt something shift in your chest. That's not weakness, that's just how the architecture works. The sophists built their entire method around that architecture. Now, I want to introduce you to someone, a fictional character. But I built him out of real parts, from real conversations, real patterns, real people I've met. His name doesn't matter. What matters is that you recognize him. He's got a degree, a decent job, a social life that functions. He pays his bills, he shows up, he does the things you're supposed to do. But somewhere beneath all of that, there's a quiet numbness, like he's been living on autopilot so long he's forgotten what it feels like to want something, not need something, not should want something, actually want. You know this person, you might be this person. He never planned to learn about persuasion. He stumbled into it the way most people stumble into the things that change them. By accident. He was at a panel, a debate, some conference his company sent him to that he didn't particularly want to attend. And on that stage was someone who had no business winning the argument they were making. The data was thin, the logic was shaky, but the room was riveted, every head tilting the same direction, every breath held at the same moment. And he thought, that's not about the content, that's about something else. He went home and told his girlfriend. She laughed, not cruelly, and said, "You're going to become one of those people who reads manipulation books, aren't you?" He said no, he was lying. To himself, mostly. He told his best friend, who immediately said, "Bro, that's just called being charismatic. Some people have it. You either do or you don't." And there it is, the oldest excuse in the world. The beautiful escape hatch that lets everyone off the hook. You're either born with it or you're not. The sophists rejected that idea explicitly. Gorgias, probably the most gifted orator in ancient Greece, built his entire school on a single radical premise. Rhetoric is a skill, not a gift. A skill, learnable, trainable, like wrestling, like mathematics. He charged for it too, which made the aristocrats furious because suddenly, anyone who could pay could learn what they thought was their exclusive birthright. So our character starts learning and immediately hits the same wall every beginner hits. He's terrible, not bad, not mediocre, terrible. He reads about Aristotle's 3 pillars, ethos, logos, pathos, The credibility, the argument, the emotional appeal. He tries to use them. It comes out robotic, calculated. People can smell the technique on him. He watches recordings of great speakers. He practices in the mirror. He sounds like someone doing an impression of a confident person. And here's the moment that almost broke him. He's sitting across from a colleague at lunch, someone who has never read a word about persuasion in their life. Naturally warm, naturally engaging. The whole table hangs on every word she says, and she's not doing anything. It's effortless. He knows that feeling. I know that feeling. Maybe you know it too. The cold, specific pain of watching someone do easily what you can't do at all. He thought, I am simply not built for this. And that's where I'm going to stop talking about him for a second, because that's where I have to talk about myself. I grew up being told I was smart, good at school, analytically sharp. But I was never the one people listened to in a room. I was the one with the correct answer that no one heard. I'd say something, the room would move on, and then someone else would say the same thing 5 minutes later, and everyone would nod. You want to talk about invisible? That's invisible. I spent years assuming this was fixed, a personality trait, a neurological fact about me. And then a professor, someone whose opinion I genuinely feared, sat across from me after a presentation and said something I've never forgotten. He didn't say it to be kind. He said it as a diagnosis. You're technically correct, and you're completely unconvincing. Those two things can coexist. Right now, for you, they do. That should have devastated me. Instead, it was the most useful thing anyone had ever said, because it meant the gap wasn't between me and some innate quality I didn't have. The gap was between where I was now and a skill I hadn't built yet. That's the central insight the sophists were selling, and that history tried to suppress. Plato hated them, genuinely. In dialogue after dialogue, he has Socrates dismantle them, mock them, expose their tricks. But read Plato carefully and you notice something interesting. Plato's own writing is astonishingly persuasive. His dialogues are beautifully constructed rhetorical machines. He dismissed the sophists, while being the greatest practitioner of their craft. That's not hypocrisy, that's a turf war. Because if persuasion is a learnable skill, if anyone can acquire it, then the people who have it naturally, or who inherited the social position that grants it automatically, lose their advantage. The sophists were dangerous not because they taught manipulation. They were dangerous because they democratized influence. Now, back to our character, and back to what actually changed things for him. He stopped trying to perform confidence, and started studying why humans respond to what they respond to. The sophists had a concept they called Kairos, the right moment, not just what you say, but when you say it. The argument that falls flat at 9 a.m. lands perfectly at 3 p.m. After something difficult has happened, when someone's defenses are down and they're actually open. He started watching for Kairos, not manipulatively. He wasn't trying to exploit people at their lowest moments. But he started noticing that timing was architecture. That the same sentence, delivered 1 minute earlier or later, produced completely different results. He started studying framing. The sophists knew, and modern cognitive science has confirmed this, that the way a choice is presented shapes how it's received more than the content of the choice itself. Amos Tversky and Daniel Kahneman proved this experimentally in the 1970s. The sophists were teaching it 2,400 years earlier. He started practicing ethos construction, not lying about his credentials, but understanding that credibility is partly performed, that how you carry yourself before you speak determines how your words land when you do. And slowly, something shifted, not overnight, not dramatically. It was more like the room stopped moving past him. People started turning toward him slightly when he spoke. His ideas started getting attributed to him. He told his girlfriend, the same one who'd teased him about the manipulation books. She watched him at a party with a mix of emotions he couldn't quite read. "You're different," she said. He asked if that was good. She thought about it. "You're more present, like you actually want to be in the conversation instead of just surviving it." And that's the thing the critics of the sophists always miss. The method doesn't make you less authentic. Done correctly, it makes you more, because you stop spending all your cognitive energy managing anxiety, and you start actually listening, actually responding, actually showing up. There's a reason Gorgias was loved, not just respected, by the people who studied with him. Because what he was teaching wasn't how to fake warmth, it was how to access the warmth that social anxiety was blocking. Our character wasn't learning to pretend to be persuasive. He was learning to remove the static between what he actually thought and what actually came out. The sophists called this arete, excellence, not moral perfection. Functional excellence, being the best possible version of the thing you are. For an orator, arete meant this: the right words at the right moment, delivered with the right energy to the right audience. 4 variables, all learnable, none of them requiring you to be born special. So where does this leave us? Here's the thesis, as plainly as I can say it: the most important skill in human society, the ability to communicate in a way that moves people, has never been the exclusive property of the naturally gifted. It was always a technology. The sophists built it, the powerful buried it, and it's available to you right now. Not the manipulative version, not the version that tricks people into things against their interests, but the version that closes the gap between what you actually think and what other people actually hear. That gap is costing you in relationships, in work, in every room where you have something valuable to say and watch it disappear into the air unacknowledged. The ordinary person who masters Kairos, framing, ethos, who learns to speak with the architecture of the human mind in mind, isn't a manipulator. They're just finally being heard. That's not dark, that's not sinister. That's the oldest democratic promise in Western civilization. Our character figured it out, not because he was gifted, because he was relentless. You don't have to be born a sophist, you just have to start. Before you scroll, one question. And I want a real answer, not a polished one. Have you ever had the experience of being in a room, fully knowing you were right and completely failing to be believed? How did that feel? And what did you do about it? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one. And whatever you write, know this: the fact that you're asking the question means you're already further along than you think.